Hey everybody, this is Perch. Hey, let's do some legal questions because those are fun. No, actually, they can be quite a lot of fun, particularly in the muddy world of comics. And by the way, in many cases, and I'm going to preface this entire video by saying this, the thing about that legality is that it usually operates under two kind of overriding principles. One is that there's often bets, mitigated bets made by companies that you're not going to sue, even if they do something that oversteps. Even if they do something that violates a trademark or something else, it's worth too much time. And probably the most famous, best practitioner of this advice, or this strategy, not advice, is Disney, who created a complete mythology around lawyers and legality and lawsuits. And to the point of, have you heard the story? You know the story that there's like a kid's daycare or something, and they painted Disney characters on the inside, where the kids could kind of see them and everything else. And Disney came in and issued a cease and desist. Have you heard that story? The funny thing is, it's come out, and this is one of those not urban legends, because Disney absolutely did sue a daycare to get them to take their likenesses down. But what's interesting is if you dig into it, you'll find far fewer lawsuits than you think. But you'll also find something else fairly interesting. Disney themselves hyped up the fact that they did this. Now, why would they do that? It was terrible press. People are like, oh, evil corporation Disney, and certainly everybody got very grumbly about it. But you know what else they did? They stopped trying. The threat of the lawsuit, the threat of, we're going to sue you if you overstep, was enough to get a lot of people just to comply. And that's kind of how their strategy works. Now, the reality is there are tons of daycares and restaurants and all kinds of things that use Disney likenesses, and Disney doesn't sue. Why? Because it's frankly not worth their effort. That's generally the answer with a lot of legal stuff. If it's not worth the effort, people don't bother. And if they don't bother, then you can get away with quite a bit. So you're taking a calculated risk. And companies as well, especially large companies like Disney, just like they violently protect their own IP in illusion. Sometimes they do, make no mistake about it, but it's more illusion than fact. The other thing they do is they gleefully violate other people's trademarks like crazy, but using the same strategy of, hey, if you come after us, you are going to be battling 5,000 lawyers and tons of money. So yeah, we may be breaking the law a little bit, but do you really want to get involved? Because it'll hurt you if you do. That's a strategy they play. Is it a slimy strategy? Absolutely. But it is the strategy they play. It's a strategy a lot of big companies play. So let's get into this specific question here that we have from a viewer. It says, Dear Perch, first off, I know you're not an attorney or lawyer, or am I? That's a whole mistake. Never mind. But bear with me as I lay out this question. Todd McFarlane named his creator-owned character hero or anti-hero Spawn, alter ego Al Simmons, after a black person that he knew or knew the same person by the same name. My question is, should a creator get permission to use a factual person's name for a fictional version of that person for whatever reason, which in Todd's case to get money from, and that person whose name being used isn't paid one penny, or does it fall under the First Amendment or right of freedom of speech? Okay, that's an interesting question. Let's continue the mail and then we'll get to answer it. Quick history lesson. The later Washington Irving was named after the late George Washington. But this was when the country was young and pre-IP, copyright, trademark laws, etc., excluding family members who, for many generations, where the father was named after either the firstborn or secondborn son after him, but for some reason in almost any culture it's not the same for the women. By that I mean the mother doesn't name her daughters after her. If you don't have that answer, I understand perfectly. I'm not sure I understand this. I'm not understand where you went there with that question. Is it that you get family members who name their kids like George Jr., but you don't get like Mary Jr. or Sue Jr.? They do it more for men than women. I don't know the answer to that. I don't know. History, there was an idea that the boys would carry on the legacy of the family, and so you wanted to keep the name the same. I'm honestly not sure. Maybe maybe there's just not very many boys' names. There's like 12 of them. That's all you got. And so if girls have like 5,000 names, so it's really unfair to the men. No, I don't know the answer to that. I'm not sure what you meant by that. Anyway, P.S. It's nice to hear someone who doesn't take himself seriously when it comes to something you like in comics, Perch. And as a joke, you could mention my name and you're taking shots at editing comics by Perch, at your editing comics by Perch video. I mean, what editing? There's no editing. Don't be ridiculous. All right. So the legality of using a name. Well, generally speaking, and this would hold up in court, Todd McFarlane, if somebody is named Al Simmons, that person would have to prove that Todd took more than just the name. They would have had to take the likeness. They would have had to take kind of mannerisms or sayings. They would have had to basically imply that Todd took major parts of the character of the person to create this character, and that would be kind of hard to prove, especially when the character is Spawn and the alter ego runs around in a cape and everything else. It's you'd have to really prove. Like Al Simmons would have to be somebody that, one way you could do it is if there was a real life Al Simmons who was in the military and died the way that Todd portrayed Al Simmons to die, which also wouldn't make sense because wasn't he killed by the Youngblood? Well, how was he killed again? Got it. I'm memory holing part of Spawn's death before he became, rose up from hell and became Spawn. Anyway, and had a wife name. All those kinds of elements would have to be in alignment. So you could go into court and you could say, hey, this my life story, or my son or my brother or my father's life story was stolen by Todd for use in that book. That's kind of what you'd have to prove. If you did the name and only the name, it would be hard. You would have to basically prove more than just the name. You'd have to prove intent to steal. You'd have to prove that Todd, intentionally took the name and that was a very unique name, and it would be hard to prove in court. It would be tough, and your damages would be questionable. I mean, you're starting to bank on a number of different things. You'd have to bank on having a favorable attorney, favorable jury. You'd have to bank on the judge in this case being very anti kind of corporation to give you a relatively big judgment. You'd also have to bank on the fact that you're not getting such a big judgment that's in the best interest of Todd to appeal, and that you'd win that appeal. I mean, I think it would be a hard way to make. It would be hard. You'd have to have more than just the name. You'd have to have the likeness. You'd have to have several other things in order to make it work. Now, that's the legal answer. Now, the ethical answer is if you're a comic creator and you're basing a character off of somebody, even if it's fairly loosely based, even if it's just the name, then the stand-up, be a man kind of thing to do would be to go get permission, or at least go tell somebody you're doing it. That would be the correct, right thing to do. I don't know that. I don't. Would people actually do that? I have no idea, but it'd be the right thing to do. So that's basically. I don't think there's a big legal issue that really comes into play at all, to be quite blunt. Not unless we had more things. Now, that wouldn't stop some people from trying, and absolutely, I'm quite certain that you would have people who'd want to take a run at it because they think it would be an easy buck. But in reality, it would be a lot of money in legal fees, and I don't think it would be that easy of a buck. And I think you're asking yourself for a lot of trouble, is my opinion. But comic companies have done this before. I mean, the bigger thing is not stealing somebody's likeness or stealing somebody's name, but stealing somebody's idea. That's kind of the more common thing that comes off of comics, where and it's why you see creators get really edgy about somebody coming up to a con and giving them an unsolicited pitch. It's because there have been writers who have certainly taken those and ran with them. And still, to this day, there's accusations of that, and people do plenty of that. And it's unfortunately that's also part of the business that we're in. But overall, for Al Simmons, no. But anyway, I don't know. Maybe somebody. Are there any lawyers listening? You can write your answers in the comments below. Tell me where I'm wrong. Would you, if Todd McFarlane created a brand new comic and named the character after you, would you sue? Would you? Don't know. Let me know in the comments below. Hey, like and subscribe, and thanks for listening.